This podcast is a Uniting Heart and Soul production. Hello and welcome to Filthy Hope, a podcast from Uniting Heart and Soul in Wallara, all about choosing faith and hope in the midst of the mess and filth of the world. The ministry here at Uniting Heart and Soul is one built on a declaration of radical honesty, something that we will try to embody as we have conversations about God, faith, life and religion, but also the grey spaces where those things intersect. This means that you might hear some language you're not used to hearing from a minister, but it also means that we'll be talking about some potentially confronting subject matter, frankly and honestly. So we do recommend that you hold off from listening around little ones. I'm your host, Jonty, and this week on the podcast we're diving further into our series called Where the Bleep is God, in which we're going to look at some of life's challenges and ask the tough question, where is God? This week I had the pleasure of talking to psychologist Julie Ryan about her work at Wellness HQ in Double Bay. If anything in our discussion triggers or concerns you, please don't hesitate to contact Lifeline on 13 11 14, or check out the other mental health resources down below in the show notes. Welcome to Filthy Hope. Well, hello and welcome to the podcast, Julie. Do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit to the podcast?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Julie, and I am a psychologist, and I work at a place called Wellness HQ, which is in Double Bay, and it's fee supported by the Uniting Heart and Soul Church in Wallara.
Wonderful. And how are you going? We should cover that ground before we kick off everything.
Yeah, I'm going well. I'm on holidays at the moment, school holidays, because I also work in the schools as a school psychologist. So it's great, you know. Every 10 weeks or 11 weeks we get a couple of weeks off, which is a blessing. Yeah. Yeah,
awesome. So before we dive into the full main segment, we're going to stop by the segment that we are doing at the beginning of the podcast called Vent Central, which is where one of us gets to sort of vent a little bit about something that's been grinding our gears a little bit. So Julie, has anything been grinding your gears recently?
Yeah, one of my favourite players in my football team is out for about 8 weeks, so that's really upsetting me.
And which footy team is that?
Well, can I just ask you who will be seeing this? I just have to be a bit wary.
That's a great question.
Like if it's eastern suburbs, I'm a bit frightened of saying it, but I'll go ahead. The Rabbitohs.
Yeah. Okay, we'll make sure we've got security.
Thank you. I will need that.
Yeah. No, my brother and my dad's follow the Rabbitohs. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally out of the loop with the NRL. I'm a Swannies supporter.
Oh, are you?
So, yeah.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, no, we've just had Buddy Franklin and Tom Hickey, who's our ruckman. They're both out for, I think, 6 weeks and 8 weeks, respectively. So I feel your pain with injuries.
Yeah, it's Latrell Mitchell, he's just an amazing athlete. And so, he missed the grand final last year. And so it's a real blow to have him out for 8 weeks. Yeah.
I vaguely remember that because I was living at home with my brother at the time. I remember hearing all about that. Yeah. Well, if you're watching or listening and you follow the Rabbitohs or don't follow the Rabbitohs, get in touch. I want to hear about all your footy.
There, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good.
We'll make sure we've got security.
Thanks.
Yeah. Wonderful. So let's move on. You mentioned up the top that you work here at Wellness HQ. Do you want to just quickly explain what is Wellness HQ and what do you do here at Wellness HQ?
Okay, so it's Wellness HQ is basically a counselling room. That's this here, and it's located in the Oasis at Double Bay, and it's a place where people can come to explore things that are troubling them, and a place where people can come who otherwise may not have the financial resources to get that support. So it's a wonderful cause because, especially with COVID, we have like 3 out of 4 psychologists are booked out for the next 6 months. So this has been a great way to just make it accessible to people who, like it's all very well if you've got the money, and it's not cheap to see a psychologist these days. So this is really lovely. Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. We might circle back to that at the end about how we can support that. But I wanted to ask you, as a Christian, as a person of faith, how does, this is a question I'm probably going to ask most of the guests that come on here because I'm really interested about this particular topic, but how does your faith intersect with your work? Like, does that affect it at all, or are they two separate things, or how does that play out for you?
Okay, well, I guess initially I'd say that it's through my faith in God that I became a psychologist, because I retrained quite late in life. I was 40, 2 young kids, and I went down that path because I had an early loss in my early 20s, quite a tragic loss, and that led me to counselling, and several counsellors actually before I found the right one, and then over a period of 18 months, this counsellor I developed a wonderful relationship with. I had no idea she was Christian, so through that counselling process and the relationship I built with this wonderful person who I'm friends with today, I decided, you know what, I really want to get out there and try and do the same thing, because she'd helped me so much. It actually literally turned my life around. So it was the belief she had in me that led me to find that strength to do that study for 5 years. And then how does it inform my practice today? Well, I guess from the platform that God is our attachment father, and so an attachment is something that every human being on the planet needs, and it's from birth. So for me, anyone walking in the door is immediately of immense worth, regardless of anything they've done, anything that's happened. They're just, by their very nature, so valuable. And it's such a privilege to get to know them. So I don't talk religion or anything like that. That doesn't come into it at all. It's just really about valuing that person and wanting to learn from them, because they can teach me a lot as well. And then all I want to do is to try and help them understand, what might be driving their behaviours, because often they don't understand. Yeah.
Very cool. And you mentioned attachment.
Yeah.
That was something that we talked about a little bit off air. Can you explain what is attachment theory? And then if you wanted to talk a little bit about that as well. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's pretty complex, but it's, I suppose, to simplify it, it's just the basic human need when we're born to survive is to attach to one person. You can attach to many, but you need at least one person, and it doesn't have to be a biological parent. That's the beauty of it. You just need to have a relationship with someone where that person loves you unconditionally, as God loves us, and that person, the message you're giving that child is, I see you, you see me, I've got you. And if they're able to grow up in that as they develop, it leads to what we call a secure attachment. And when you have a secure attachment, it means when life deals out inevitably the blows that it does, you're much more able to manage it than, say, if you didn't have that secure attachment. Now, the good news is that if you don't have that as a youngster, and sadly, there are young people who don't, just think of war-torn countries and so forth, and domestic violence, for example. The good news is that attachment can repair. It can repair, and often that happens within the safety of a therapeutic relationship. And it doesn't have to be a counsellor, but it can be a teacher. It could be an uncle, an aunt, a friend. That's the beauty of it. It's just someone who's got you, so that your nervous system develops in a way that you can manage stresses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So another question I have for you. In your work, you must experience and hear a lot of really tough stories of people really struggling, whether it be just general mental health struggles or some awful stories, whether it's childhood trauma or abuse or just lots and lots of awful shit. So to ask the really tough question, where do you see God when you hear those stories and when you hear those experiences of life being really tough for people?
I guess because I see God as he's a relational God. So he wants to be in relationship with us, and he's given us this innate, as I said before about attachment, innate drive to connect. So we're wired for connection. And when you come across people who've been through extraordinary hardships, often what's happened is that they've become wired for protection. And so where I see God in that case is where, again, complete acceptance, non-judgment, and allowing that person to discover or rediscover their sense of innate value, because that's often been lost or interfered with and hasn't been able to develop the way God intended, and the way that person has these wonderful innate strengths that they often gets buried. So it's such a privilege to help or assist them rediscover those sort of things. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
We, like we said at the top, Wellness HQ is a Uniting Heart and Soul thing. We offer, I don't know if we mentioned this, but it's free. If you need counselling, you can book and come in and see yourself. We're not a church that asks for your money, but if you want to contribute, it's on the website, isn't it? Ness is off camera. She's nodding at me. Yeah. So if you go to unitingheartandsoul.org, you can find Wellness HQ and those resources there. And if you want to either contribute, or if that's something that you feel like you need, that you want to take part in, do you want to explain a bit about how you might book that or get in touch with yourself? Okay,
well, if you go to our website, I don't know it off by heart, I'm afraid.
unitingheartandsoul.org.
Yeah. It's all there. My number's there. The email address is there. So you can just flick us an email, give me a call. And the other thing is, if you go to a GP and get what's called a mental health care treatment plan, I don't like the name of that, but that's what it's called, you can come along and there's absolutely no cost. However, if you can't get that, and many people can't for various reasons, the church wouldn't turn anyone away. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Before we finish, though, our final segment is something that we're calling Gratitude, which is all about finding gratitude in some of the things of the grit in the world. So is there anything that you have gratitude for? Yeah. Do you want to explain a little bit about...
Well, hang on a second. I've got things I'm gratitude for, but I don't quite understand what you mean, like in the grit.
Oh, so I'll explain.
Sorry.
Yeah. So we came up with this word gratitude, which is a cross between grit and gratitude. And it's tying in with our theme of filthy hope. So it's just, what's something that you have gratitude for?
Okay.
Just amidst if there's anything grit that's going on in your life.
I guess it's probably suffering in some ways, when it leads to almost like when it leads to like a freedom, a sense of self, the development of self. That I'm grateful for that, because certain things, if they hadn't happened in my life, I wouldn't be where I am today. And that's not to say I'm glad they happened, not at all. I wish they didn't. But it's appreciative of the fact that even though that happened led to meeting some beautiful people in my life and getting closer to our Creator.
I think we're actually going to have an episode later on talking about suffering and finding the joy in suffering and where those things start to intersect. So that's wonderful. I resonate with that a lot. Thanks so much for coming on.
It's okay.
Once again, if you need, if you want to connect with Uniting Heart and Soul and the ministry that we do, or anything to do with Wellness HQ, the website is unitingheartandsoul.org. You can connect with Julie there. But we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, Jonty. Really appreciate it.
No worries.
Cheers.
See you guys. This podcast is a Uniting Heart and Soul production.